call to order the Planning Board meeting of March 22nd, 2016. If we could have roll call, please.
Mr. Kevin Donovan.
Yeah.
Mr. Bob Doherty.
Here.
Ms. Claudia Bolgan. Mr. Jim Callahan.
Here.
Mr. Michael Ventresca.
Here.
Mr. Dave Edmonds.
Here.
Chair Carolyn Turner.
Here. First on the agenda under A&Rs is 6 Wynn Court in 13-15 Chestnut Street / Wynn Chestnut Realty Trust.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. We have two A&Rs. The first is at 6 Wynn Court and 13-15 Chestnut Street. It's an A&R of a rather unusual variety. It's one of those A&Rs that comes to you because there are two structures on the lot today, and each of those structures existed back long, long before subdivision control was in effect in the city of Woburn. So in accordance with state law, they would be permitted to divide the lot in two as long as they keep one of those buildings standing on each lot. And that's what you have before you now. One lot would have frontage on Wynn Court and one would have frontage on Chestnut Street. The only deviation from the board's regs are a minor one in that the locus plan is at 1 to 1,000 instead of 1 to 800. But it clearly depicts the locus, which is the purpose of the requirement. So staff would recommend that you endorse it as an A&R.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Dave, second by Bob. All those in favor? Yes, Mike?
Just for discussion, that we need to note that the A&R is not to be determined as a lot's conformance with all zoning requirements. I believe it's stated on the print. Just want to clarify that. That the A&R plan is not a determination as to a lot's conformance with all zoning requirements. Okay?
Thank you. Yep. Noting that it's specific to this statute, Chapter 41, Section 81-L.
Correct.
So
Thank
does that
you.
make it a legal non-conforming?
No, I don't think it's well, that's a good question. I can't say for sure. It may, yeah, I guess it would be, because it certainly doesn't meet the frontage requirements of zoning. It would have to be non-conforming, but it's legal, not.
So if they do that now, if they're a legal non-conforming, if they want to make changes to the property, they have to go and get,
It'd be very, very limited on
Yeah.
what they could do. They would need to get permission as a
they
non-conforming.
need variances and so forth. Okay.
Or special permit.
Motion by Dave, second by Bob. Vote was 6-0.
The next A&R is on 347 to 353 Main Street. And it consists of a lot division, again dividing one lot. It's actually taking a small lot, lot number 1, which, let me see if I can orient you best. There's a note toward the left-hand side near the notation for Main Street. You'll see a little note that says Lot 1, area, or A equals 96 square feet. The purpose of the A&R is to create that Lot 1 and to add it to land of Giuseppe Fodera to form one building lot. We believe that it meets all the requirements for endorsement as an A&R plan, and I'm recommending you endorse it as such.
So moved. Second.
Motion by Dave, second by Bob. All those in favor? 6-0 carries. Next on the agenda is the zoning amendment. Proposed zoning amendment, Alderman Michael Anderson and Richard Haggerty, amendments to section 14.5 of the Woburn zoning ordinance entitled Townhouse Development in Residential District R-1 and R-2, requirements for open space, and note that it is a public hearing. Is the Alderman present?
He is not, I'm sorry. Madam Chair, I spoke with the Alderman this afternoon. He was not able to be here this evening for this meeting. I could give you a little update on events since the last meeting. There were two issues that were mentioned when we had our last discussion. One was that it was discovered or discussed as part of the last meeting that the one parcel of potential open space that right now is known to potentially perhaps be able to take advantage of the new ordinance that would add cemetery uses to uses allowed on open space parcels in townhouse developments, was in fact a portion of Shannon Farm. And when we talked about that at the last meeting, it was noted that a significant portion of what would be the open space parcel there was actually covered by an easement owned by Eversource. And so the board asked me to do a little bit of research with the utility to find out if in fact a cemetery use was possible. So I reached out to a contact I have there. We traded emails. We did not speak directly, but I did get an email from him, which I will be happy to read to you. Let me see. He starts by saying, "Thank you for sharing the project plans and contacting Eversource about the right-of-way crossing. We've not received an application to license a crossing of our transmission easement, so the process has not yet started." Then he sent me a copy of the application. He followed up saying that he had missed initially a question that I had asked him relative to whether this open space parcel could maybe serve in whole or in part as a cemetery. And his response to that was this: "I think the answer is like any use or activity, a proposed cemetery would be evaluated during the license application process, including compatibility with the Eversource easement rights, any new cemetery use including compatibility with the Eversource easement rights, public safety, conflicts with electrical infrastructure, etc. So I don't have a quick answer except to say that I don't know of any new cemetery use that has been approved within an Eversource transmission easement." So, sort of inconclusive information there, but some indication from Eversource, however little of what might happen. The second item was that Attorney Joe Tarby had asked during the public hearing segment if the board would consider several other amendments to not only section 1453, but a couple of others. And I had raised a question as to whether the board could, if it wanted to, recommend some of those, given the confines of the public hearing notice that had been published. And I asked the city solicitor, Ellen Callahan-Doucette, for her opinion and provided her with a copy of the amendments and a copy of the legal notice as it had been published. And she wrote back to indicate that, in fact, they could certainly be considered within the confines of the hearing notice. So anything that Attorney Tarby had suggested could be considered fairly by this board. That's my
Thank
update.
you. Open for discussion? Mike?
I think that's the information, I'm just finding hard to digest as far as now knowing that Eversource does not have an opinion one way or the other, and also the recommendations that Attorney Tabby recommended, and now can be folded in under this. Myself, I'd like a little bit more time to go over it and kind of visualize what's going to be happening, where this is relating to. And I know Claudia, I know she's not here tonight, and I know and I value her judgment, and yeah, I wouldn't mind having her opinion heard on this as well. That's just my thoughts. So, at this point, I need to really go over it with a fine-tooth comb, and knowing that, Mr. Tabby had some good recommendations, and really go through that as well before I'm comfortable making a recommendation.
Thank you. Anybody else?
To that end, just to sort of add to that, I happened to note on the city council's schedule that they have a hearing going on too, and a process, and they've continued their matter until April 15th. And so that would be several days
So do
after
we
your
have
next
time?
meeting. Yeah, your next
Okay.
meeting would be on April 12th.
So I would make a motion that we continue this discussion till our April 12th meeting.
Motion to continue,
Second.
second by Bob, all those in favor?
Madam Chairman, excuse me,
Yes.
before you would take that vote, could we ask if there's anybody in the audience who would like to address the board tonight, just before we continue it?
Yes, this is a matter scheduled for public hearing. Would anybody like to step forward and offer any comments?
Sorry, thank you.
Thank you. And the public hearing will be continued as well.
Yes.
That would be the motion. Did you take a, I don't think we took a vote
There
on
wasn't a
that.
separate motion on that.
I'll make a second motion to continue the public hearing as well.
Motion to continue.
I'll
public
second
hearing,
that
second by
also.
Bob. All those in favor? 6-0 carries. And next we have under definitive subdivisions, also scheduled for public hearing, East Dexter Avenue definitive subdivision, Seaver Construction. This public hearing was continued from March 8th.
Okay, for the record, Joseph Tabby, I'm an attorney with the law firm of Murtha Kalina, 600 Unicorn Park Drive in Woburn. This plan has been before the board a couple of times. We've had meetings with staff, planning board staff, we've had meetings, my client is engineer, I've had meetings with city engineer and the DPW superintendent. And I'd just like to point out, once again, that this definitive subdivision plan is not similar to the preliminary plan you're gonna see later on in the agenda, where we're going in and creating a subdivision with building lots, et cetera. This extension came out of the city council process, in which Mr. Seaver was seeking a zoning amendment and subsequent approval of a townhouse development where residents in the area were concerned about one ingress and egress into that entire area. So there were discussions with Alderman Raymond requesting that this extension be built. Mr. Seaver agreed to do it. It was made a condition of the special permit decision, and we're here before this board. This roadway extension will provide a second means of ingress and egress to that area. During the public hearing process, all we heard about was that, you know, if there was some emergency up in that area and a road was blocked, there's no other way in, there's no other way out. So through this process, we originally started, we had a request of 10 waivers that we had requested. And as you know, under section 6, paragraph A of your planning board rules and regulation, the board has the authority to waive strict compliance with your rules and regulations if it is in the public interest and not inconsistent with the subdivision control law. I would submit to you that this extension is in the public interest, as we heard through the public hearing process before the city council, and we would ask you to consider the various waivers. We now have gone from 10 waivers down to, I believe, there's still four waivers, with the most important one that is being withdrawn, and that is the grade of the roadway, which is now at 8%. There were members of this board who asked Mr. Seaver to work to get the grade down below what was originally proposed. We took your suggestions. Mr. Seaver and his engineer were able to bring the grade down to 8%. So we feel that we're in a position where we do meet the intent of the subdivision control law, keeping in mind that this is not a subdivision, the development or roadway that's being built here. What I'd like to do at this time is have Mark Slager go over the waiver list and the revisions that were made since the last time we were before this board. So, Mark?
record, Mark Slater from Allen Engineering. Let me just pull up the waiver list. So we submitted a list of waivers which have been revised, and we can go through them quickly. The first waiver was to not provide a survey plan. We know we need to do the surveying eventually. We've actually started that process, so the surveyor is out doing what he needs to do to prepare the plan. We are going to withdraw that request. We will have the plan completed. It is not done as of yet, but it will be completed prior to endorsement of the plans. And we'll submit it to the board and all the departments for review to make sure it's complete and accurate. The next waiver, again, we're still continuing the waiver for the 40-foot right-of-way width because we don't have any choice. We have 40 feet and we don't have any adjacent land to achieve 50 feet. We are withdrawing the request for the waiver for increasing the grade, exceeding the maximum grade of 8%. The revised plans show a maximum grade of 8%, so we are able to meet that regulation. The drainage has also been revised and increased, so we're withdrawing the waiver that we requested for allowing an increase in the peak flow rate from the site. The revised drainage calculations show that there will be a slight reduction in the peak rate along with a slight reduction in the volume. And that was achieved by increasing the capacity of the infiltration systems at each of the catch basins. We're withdrawing the waiver request for the additional streetlights. I can call up to that plan. You recall there was a section of about 600 feet where there were no streetlights. It was pretty much at the crest of the hill. There was a streetlight down by the McManus property near the end of the pavement. Then the next streetlight would have been up near the development, right at the corner of the development. There's actually a pole there, and he was going to put a streetlight there. We have added one streetlight in the middle, right about here. So it's about 300 feet each side. So that was what we felt the board was looking for. So we've added that street light and rescinded that waiver request. Next one was, we've already conceded this one. There was a request to use 4-inch thick vertical granite curb. We decided long ago to use a 6-inch granite curb. We are still requesting the sidewalk on one side. However, we modified that request to go from bituminous pavement to cement concrete as required in the regulations, but we are still requesting the sidewalk on one side of the street. The waiver to eliminate the planting strip. Typically in a 50-foot wide right-of-way, you would have the pavement and then you'd have a 2.5-foot or so planting strip between the curbing and the sidewalk. In some of the more recent subdivisions, for example, Carlson Way, there's a 40-foot layout there, but the sidewalks go directly adjacent to the curbing, and the planting strip was put behind the sidewalk. We don't have the luxury of having a planting strip behind the sidewalk either because we don't own the land. Typically with the street trees, they're planted on private property outside the right-of-way. We don't have the authority to make that kind of a commitment, which goes into the next waiver as well, to not require the shade trees. This is, again, we're just constructing the roadway. We're not clear cutting any of the lots. There's 4 homes that already exist on the roadway. There's plenty of trees out there that we're gonna preserve. So we feel that that waiver is appropriate. And then lastly, we're requesting to waive the pavement width from 26 to 24 feet. So as you can see, we have reduced the number of waivers that requested considerably. One of the words that was thrown out last time was compromise when we came back with a plan that didn't show any change in the road grade. So we tried to make a 9% work, and then we figured, we'll just go with the 8%, see what it looks like. And as predicted, it is a pretty substantial cut at the top, but hopefully we won't hit any ledge and we'll be able to make it work. So we felt that was probably the most significant compromise. However, we still would like to have the board look favorably upon the waiver request that we are currently still seeking. This time, I guess I'll go through the specific revisions to the plan. We did meet with the fire chief and the fire prevention officer to go through the turning radius that goes into the site. I know that's a separate issue, but it does come into play with respect to the definitive subdivision in that originally our subdivision was going to extend East Dexter just to the site entrance. We are now widening all the way down to Chester Ave, so that's an additional 100 feet or so of road widening, which will include granite curbing on both sides and a sidewalk along the front of the site. So you can see there's a sidewalk right in here, and it will continue up this side of the road. I've also added the connection in here, which we'll talk about under the next agenda item. And you can see the number of chambers at each has basically been doubled at each of the catch basins to increase the capacity. One of the other items that was brought up by the Conservation Commission was the additional flow coming from off-site up in this area is a significant amount of impervious area that was all flowing down into these two catch basins and coming out into the head wall. So they wanted an analysis of the impact that was going to have, knowing that we have that existing flow now. They wanted to see how the capacity was going to be affected, and specifically how the flow velocities exiting the pipe were going to be impacted. And given that we're adding a pipe and splitting the flow, we do have a reduction in the velocity, so we won't be contributing, we'll actually be improving the flow characteristics at that condition to prevent erosion. There is quite a bit of buildup in the channel downstream from the pipe, and it's causing the whole system to surcharge. So again, with the Conservation Commission asked that we address that issue as well to help maintain and restore the full capacity of the drainage system, and we've agreed to do that as well. We go to, you can see this is the road profile. We're, again, continuing the start of the road down by Chester Ave and coming up at 5%. Then when we get to the end of the pavement, it goes up slightly at 6%, going into a vertical curve, and then down at 8%. But you can see we have a significant cut of about 10 or 11 feet at the top, close to 12 feet even. And then when we consider the water main being down 6 to 7 feet at the bottom of the water main plus bedding, you're looking at about an 18 to 20 foot cut just to get the water main in place. Another issue that we came across in the 8% is this section of existing sewer main. You can see this is the finished road grade, which would intercept the existing sewer main here. So what we're going to do is eliminate that section of sewer and put in a new manhole at the end of the sewer line, which is right off of Monk Street. It doesn't affect any of the properties because there are no properties on that side. The last manhole would be down here, and then we have the development up in here that's going to be serviced by another sewer connection over in, off of Chester. We've got City of Woburn land right here. They don't need sewer, and this is basically an unbuildable lot right here. Again, there's a street light. You can see there's a proposed street light going in here, and I show the underground electric to service that street light as well. And again, lastly, I did, like I said, I did redo the drainage, and we don't have an increase in the peak rate of runoff. So the only other item that really needs to be discussed is the infiltration chambers. And the Public Works Director is fairly adamant about concrete because he feels that these are not capable of withstanding roadway traffic, when that's absolutely not the case. They're certainly designed for it. In fact, they're actually coated. You can see the green stripe on top of the black structures. That indicates that these are heavy-duty structures capable of withstanding heavy traffic loading. And as you can see, it's underneath the parking lot for a, unknown home improvement facility at the top. But again, they're certainly capable of withstanding the roadway loading. And in my opinion, they are more durable than concrete with respect to salt and corrosive materials that can get into it. You can look around the city, and over time, the concrete in the catch basins, the brick in the concrete basins, they do fail. And it's because of the road salt, because of the wear and tear, and they need to be replaced. And a lot of opinions is it's out of sight, it's out of mind, and it gets neglected until the catch basin actually collapses. These structures are very resilient to salt. They are not impacted by salt at all. They're specifically designed for this purpose. In fact, these are designed to handle domestic and commercial waste for septic systems as well. So they are designed to handle corrosive environments, whereas concrete basically isn't. We can look around the state, you can see all the bridges that have concrete abutments that are falling apart, the Jersey barriers that they put out on Route 95 and 495. The snow gets against them, the salt gets against them, and they just crumble. So these are a lot more durable in the long run. They're easy to install. If the if the Public Works Department ever had a reason to replace them because of damage during construction or excavation nearby, they're cheaper and easier to put in. The system that we're proposing, all of those chambers will show up in one truck. They'll get offloaded with a backhoe, and a couple of guys will load them into a trench. If we went with concrete chambers, we would need twice as many because they're only 4 feet long. These are 7 feet long. They would have to come in on multiple trucks and get offloaded by the crane that's coming on the truck. So that takes a lot more coordination with the excavator, scheduling with the concrete supplier, and making sure the hole is prepped and ready, and hoping that the truck shows up on time to offload the equipment into the hole. Whereas if these are on site, when you get a break in the weather or whatever your schedule can accommodate you, you dig the hole, you put the chambers in, you backfill, and you're done. And you don't have to wait for a third party scheduling that may or may not happen. So that's my thing. Also, with respect to stormwater quality, the DEP has recognized these as being able to provide 80% removal of total suspended solids when they're combined with what's called a separator row, which is basically taking one row of the inlet, wrapping it in filter fabric, and that satisfies the DEP requirement for stormwater management, which we are obligated to abide by in this particular case since we are discharging into a wetland. So that is, that's my pitch on the high-density polyethylene. They are used all over the place, and we're hoping the board would accept my, my spiel on utilizing these. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the board and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Yes, Dave?
First question, on that street light, it will be on the side of the street where the development is shining towards the existing houses?
Yes.
Okay, because there was a letter in our stuff where somebody was asking whether it could be put on the other side of the street so it would shine away from their house.
It's easy to, we have to cross the street with the electric, and we'd have to be dealing with the water and sewer and all of that.
Right, I'm just bringing that up.
Yeah.
So what do we do to maintain the security the light gives, but also not blind the abutters with the street light? I mean, I know they use the LEDs now, and they're not as harsh, and,
Right, and they're downward facing as
Yeah.
opposed to, the rounded glare.
So is there some kind of a method you'll use to ensure that there is no shining into the yards of these people? Because they've enjoyed a nice dark backyard for a long time.
Right.
There doesn't seem to be any objection with putting in the street light, but I wouldn't want anybody to get surprised and all of a sudden realize they have this very bright light shining in their backlight, in their backyards.
Yeah, I think the light is right about here. So, the only thing I can offer is that there'll still be quite a bit of tree cover in that remaining parcel, along with, you know, a fairly decent grade change. I think the road cut in that particular area is about 6 or 8 feet, so it'll put the light down a little bit.
Did we have something from Alderman Tedesco on that?
Well, we did, and I want to make sure, because I'm scrambling here, trying to think of it myself. There was a letter from Alderman Tedesco, and I believe the residents actually wanted it on the side of the street that you have it. You have it on the development side of the street, am I right?
Right.
On the side of your development.
Right, but I thought I saw a letter where somebody was asking, I mean, there's a ton of stuff I had to read, but
Yes.
if there was, I thought I read somewhere where somebody was asking, could it be on the other side of the street?
The intersection of Tedesco Way and East Dexter.
It's hard to tell.
Some residents did ask if the street light could be placed on the right side of the road. And the marking that's shown on the plan is in fact on the development side. So where they're placing it is consistent
Okay,
with what Councilor Tedesco got from the residents.
so you put that in there to see if I read the stuff?
That's right.
Okay, all right, okay, so.
Thank you.
Another question, the sidewalk will be on one side of the street, but will it be on the same side of the street? Or will it, originally you were gonna have it halfway and then go on the other side of the street? So it's kind of a play on words when you say the sidewalk is on one side of the street, it is. So on one side, it's on this side of the street, till you get to here, then it's on that side of the street. So it's kind of funky language, so we're still requiring people to cross the street if they want to continue walking on the sidewalk.
Right, and I went through this with Jay Duran this afternoon as well, and, because he was thinking that it was gonna be on one side consistently the whole way. And either way, you're gonna have to cross the street. So what we did is we started the sidewalk on the same side as the development, so that they can come out here. We've actually continued the sidewalk down to Chester. You come out the development, you cross the entrance, and you come up the hill. You go across the hill, and then down the hill on the other side. And cross right about where the last driveway is, right about here. So there'll be a crossing here. And Jay's concern was the sight distance, because you're coming up over the crest of the hill, and you have the sidewalk, but in reality, the sidewalk will be 500 feet from the top of the hill. If you go back to the other page, if you were to put the sidewalk on this side and cross here, you're only about 150 to 100 feet from the top of the hill.
Will it be a formal crosswalk?
Yes,
Will
there'll
it
be
have
handicap ramps with a crosswalk.
And signage indicating
Yeah,
that there's an
whatever,
upcoming?
whatever's required for handicap
Well,
accessible
But
sidewalk, pedestrian.
I don't know what the ruling on signs is, but I would like to see something that tells the traffic in the middle of this roadway, kind of after a hill, that there's a crosswalk, because it's gonna be kind of an odd place for a crosswalk. So just to tell the drivers, because we can't assume everybody on this road is gonna be a resident,
Right.
you know? Because we know what happens, somebody says, ooh, there's a quick way, and, you know. And so, is that possible, that we could do that? I
Oh,
just-
absolutely,
All
yeah.
right,
Yeah, absolutely. That could be, you can even condition it
okay,
in the decision.
yes.
If I might, we have the benefit of having City Engineer Jay Corey here, and I'm going to ask him maybe an unfair question. If he knows off the top of your head whether there's MUTCD signage that we could use as advance warning signage for the crosswalk. Required.
Okay, good,
Uniform traffic control.
good, that's
There
satisfactory.
are standard signs that would go on each side, so everybody would know it's crosswalk.
Okay, good. And my last question, could you go back to that picture of the tanks, the water system underground? Yeah, so I'm trying to get a sense of how far below grade those are, because it's kind of hard for me to tell. So if the surface was all the way across that picture, how far below would those tanks be?
There's actually I submitted a handout, and on page 7, they have a minimum required depth and a maximum burial depth.
I'm a visual guy, just tell me.
Okay, the deepest, they can't be any deeper than 12 feet, but they have to be a minimum of 16 inches below finished grade for pavement situation in order to handle the traffic.
Okay, so now they're put in the ground, they backfill, and because I'm trying to get a sense, I like them, I just
Yep.
don't know how sturdy they are. So they put them in, they backfill in between the chambers, all the
Yes.
soil,
With stone.
right,
crushed
with stone, so it's solid.
Yep.
And then what goes over the top?
Typically, there's 6 inches of stone cover, and then filter fabric. And then, in this case, we would use 8 inches of processed gravel, compacted to 95% density, and then pavement on top of that. So you'd have your 8 inches of pavement, 4 inches of pavement, a minimum of 8 inches of gravel. The city requires 12 inches, so we'd have 12 inches of gravel and then 6 inches of stone.
And that would hold the fire engines and the moving
Yes.
trucks and everything else?
Yes.
Okay, I'm good.
Any other questions, Jim?
My question is back to the sidewalks on both sides. I just don't see why we can't get there. I don't really see, the major effort to get there. Reduce down the planting strip or something like that, or amenable where I was to eliminating that, to make it easier. I understand the property's not yours. Top of the hill is a city-owned property, I believe, at a certain point. But we're talking about a development that exists up there with probably 100 houses existing. We're putting in 41 units. It's gonna be the major thoroughfare for the better part of the entire development on a pretty good grade. And we're gonna have sidewalks where we have to cross the street midway down. Doesn't sound like a very safe environment. You're crossing the street with someone's coming down there, and they're gonna be more than likely, without a lot of children, in that type of development. So they're gonna be flying in and out. Whereas the local residents and those narrow streets that are up there now, they can't fight their way out of there on a good day. They're gonna be using this as a quick exit in and out. I just don't see it, being beneficial, why the city should consider giving relief on that sidewalk. Where we put in subdivisions of much smaller scale than a right of way, and we totally enforce the sidewalk provisions along with the street width. I just, like to hear a good explanation of why. Other than the access to the properties, because it just means you're turning perpendicular to the sidewalk to grade it.
Well, we are trying to minimize the impervious area because of the drainage. It's a very challenging site from a drainage perspective. We have a very challenging scenario here in this location with respect to grade. If we were to put a sidewalk here 5 foot wide, we would have a wall approximately 4 to 6 feet tall here. And we would also have a wall in this front yard. We are trying to do the least amount of disturbance to the existing neighborhood. And we also have 2 utility poles that would interfere with the sidewalk. These are actually further from the curbing than the other locations. We do have 1 pole that we have to move because it would be in the pavement, but if we were to put sidewalks on both sides, now we would have 2 more poles that would need to get moved to accommodate the sidewalk, along with constructing the extra wall. Now, this section of sidewalk, if you come down here, it's just gonna dead end, and then you would just have to cross down here anyway. So, this is the section of sidewalk that, is in question in that location. And then up on the top of the hill, there aren't any residences on the top of the hill. right here, you've got a house, and he's got the sidewalk right in front next to his driveway, but up in here, there are no residences to be served by the sidewalk. Everything's gonna be coming from that side of the road. So rather than go in and wreak havoc with the existing terrain in front of the neighbor's house, we felt it was more appropriate to just have one sidewalk and cut down on the impervious and make the drainage work and do the least amount of disturbance to the neighborhood.
So you don't think, I think it's Mr. Prasad that owns the property on the north side of that street. Once this roadway system's in and the curb cuts that cut into Hinckley and Monks and those streets on the north side of the street, he's not gonna be down here with the petition for a subdivision in front of us? I'll be willing to bet it'll be within weeks that we see his proposal. So why would we not consider future development? That's what we're here for, is the planning of the city. Those streets there, as though they say, are not constructed, but will soon be. They're a prime tract of land ready to go. Especially when a different developer comes along and he puts in the roadway system in. The abutters are just waiting for that to be completed so they can go in there and don't have those roadway costs. So to eliminate sidewalks on the city's behalf, in my opinion, is foolish. When this neighborhood gets fully developed, they're gonna have a roadway and side streets developed in the near future, and they're not gonna have the proper, zoning amendments that are in the bylaws since 1985. When you bought the tract of land, you knew you had to put it in there, you know what your costs are per roadway, for linear footage. And now all I'm hearing is nickel and dime answers why we can't do things. Right? The other question I have for you, did you do test pits?
Yes.
Where are they located on the property? Can you point them out, please?
I have one right in here, right near this drainage basin. I have another one right near catch basin number 3, right in here. And then there was another one down on the bottom of the hill, just by that utility, past the utility pole near the corner.
I see the results on the drawings of the soil conditions. Did you discuss that with Mr. Duran at all when you
Yes,
talked today?
yes,
I take it that you're both satisfied
yes.
with the conditions, that's good.
Mhm.
Did you encounter any ledge? It doesn't mention any.
No,
So made it more feasible to cut down the top of the hill?
we only went down, the deepest pit was 9.5 feet, which was suitable for the drainage.
That's all I have for now.
I just wanted to follow up on something that Mr. Callahan said that I've been thinking about too, in terms of how to view this roadway. And your point is well taken. There is land adjacent to this that isn't owned by Mr. Seaver that someday may very well be developed, and it may not be a day too far. There are two ways to approach it, and one is to take the longer and broader view, and to suggest now that Mr. Seaver should build out the entirety of that road to its full standards, in the presumption that someday somebody is gonna come in and do future development. A different approach, or an alternative to that, is to suggest that Mr. Seaver needs to do what Mr. Seaver needs to do to handle not only his 41 units, but to address the issue of a second means of access to this existing neighborhood. And it's what I was sort of alluding to at our last meeting, where the board, I think, could, if it is careful, make decisions that are specific to this project in terms of decisions on waivers that you may feel comfortable granting for this project and this scope, but which you might not feel comfortable granting if you knew there were another 50 or 100 or 200 homes. You might have a very different answer as a planning board. And so the thought would be that there isn't much you could do about A&Rs, but on subdivision plans, if you were to grant any of these waivers, I think done carefully, the planning board could absolutely reopen any of those. Should someone else come in the future and propose more development, then maybe that development necessitates a second sidewalk, because now there will be that many people more in the neighborhood that might use it. maybe the pavement width, for whatever reason, goes to 26 feet from 24, if there are more homes proposed for along there. So I'm not sure that either approach is wrong. I think they both could be right. It just depends on which way you might want to look at it.
Thank you. Yes, Jim?
To rebut that, we are in the business of planning. With the open tracts of land there, no tract of land in the city of Woburn is gonna be left undeveloped for very long. We're seeing tracts of land that are under easements currently, ledge and water on a very regular basis. To think that an undisturbed tract of land that's got a roadway system that's brand new is not gonna be developed, I would think would be short-sighted on this board's behalf.
And just to be clear, I don't think that it will go undeveloped. I think at some point it would be, it's just a matter of timing.
Right.
To entertain the thought of doing the process twice is, I don't think is anyone's best interest.
Mike?
Yeah, I thought a few meetings back on this, we discussed exactly what the director had just stated, that if in fact, was it Monk Street or Ninth Street do get built out, I thought we were gonna re-look at the additional sidewalk at that time. I know, I had that in the back of my head, I mean, you know, I typically, I don't have a problem with what's presented, only because he's been asked to go above and beyond. I know originally he wanted to go out another way and it would have been built out correctly, but throughout this all, he's been asked to go out this way to alleviate a lot of other problems. With that said, and knowing that there's a potential for more development to go in there, I thought we mentioned we could condition down the road if other developments went in there to build out that sidewalk. I believe we talked about that, you know, a while back, and that's why I'm comfortable with the way it currently stands. You know, by him reducing this roadway grade to 8%, I'm really pleased with. And, you know, I can imagine the amount of effort that it went to get to that, and how much work is required to do that. So I'm pleased with the way the sidewalks are structured right now. But I do have a question on these stormwater retention system. Mark, I'm looking at these pictures here, and they seem to be like in parking lots. Have these ever been placed on roadways, beneath roadways?
They have been placed within roadways in private developments. I don't know of any cases where they're within roadways. As far as being infiltration chambers, I know of plenty of cases where they use piping that's made out of the same exact material, and that's done across the country. They use it, it's the same company. You can see the black piping that goes in and out of it. It's the same exact material, high-density polyethylene. They use that in roadways quite a bit.
So you feel this is, the way you have it designed and the way it'll be buried, it wouldn't cause any problems at all?
No, it won't. And there's a manufacturer's warranty with these things too. I did just do a similar system where initially the developer wanted concrete, but due to the cost, it was more than twice to do, to go with concrete as opposed to these chambers. In these particular case, it was a 200 by 100 square foot field beneath a parking garage. So it was underneath the slab of the parking garage. So if they weren't concerned with the structural integrity underneath a parking garage, then I don't think there should be an issue for a roadway.
Tim?
All right, have you put any of these systems in a state or city-owned roadway?
You know what?
State or city-owned roadway?
No,
You know of anywhere you've seen it put in?
I'm not aware of any.
Is it typical that they would put it off the roadway, adjacent to the roadway system? So
Yes.
I think that's where Mr. Duran's going with it. If it was off the roadway system, you wouldn't have a concern. But in
Right,
the
because he wouldn't have
roadway
the
itself,
ownership of them. Mhm.
Is the maintenance and the wear and tear.
Well, typically, if they're not in the right-of-way, for example, at Carlson Way, there is a system like this, but it's out in the backyards, and it's not maintained by the city. It's maintained by the homeowners association. So his concern is maintenance of these types of systems overall, and he feels that concrete is better and more durable. I don't agree with the durability aspect of it, and from a maintenance standpoint, you maintain them exactly the same way. You open the manhole and flush them out and vacuum out the sediment, just like you would if it was a concrete chamber. So from a maintenance perspective, yeah, they're gonna be maintained the same way, but in this particular case, they're gonna be maintained by the city. We would prefer to have some land outside the right-of-way so that we could do it this way, but our hands are kind of tied in that matter.
I guess my concern with that, to further your point, Jim, is that it's more wear and tear. The example you gave, I think, was underneath, you said underneath the garage, and the other example was in the back. I mean, this is constant wear and tear. And I guess my concern, aside from the maintenance and who's responsible for that, is the wear and tear, number one. And number two, you said there's a lifetime warranty on the infiltration chambers, correct?
I don't know what the warranty is. I know there's a warranty. I don't know the duration of the warranty. But they do have a manufacturer's warranty involved.
Do you know, is it a product that's typically replaced, or typically needs to be replaced? Or once it's installed, that's it,
Once
aside
it-
from damage?
Yeah, once it's installed, that's it. Some of these systems have been in the ground since, since they were first installed. I don't know the exact date that they started coming out, but I would guess it's, 30-plus years. Maybe Mr. Corey knows a little bit more about how long they've been used, but I've never known them to be replaced unless they're damaged by somebody doing some excavating in the area.
And if the DPW has requested or suggested that concrete be used, why is it that you're resistant to that, and you're looking primarily at this, this particular infiltration system? Is it primarily cost?
Well, it's cost, but it's also an accepted method by DEP as far as stormwater management and stormwater treatment. They have, this particular unit is approved for a certain rating to give the TSS removal that's required for when we're discharging into the wetland. There is nothing on the DEP website with respect to the concrete chambers that provide the appropriate pre-treatment.
And you said it's accepted under the, is it a stormwater policy, I
The
believe?
stormwater management policy, yes.
And it's accepted under that policy. Do you know what the preferred method is? Is concrete preferred?
No, they don't make a preference. They just say that this gives you a certain amount of TSS removal. And they compare it to other manufacturers and other types of systems that are out there. But this particular system has an enhanced pre-treatment method as opposed to just the regular infiltration.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Carol?
Bob?
Tina, are we gonna hear from Mr. Duran on this and other things at some point, or?
Yes, funny that you should ask that question. It's a good segue. We have a number of communications that came in relative to this, and there's a couple that have asked that I actually read them out loud. And I'd like to acknowledge them, and one is actually from DPW Commissioner Jay Duran, and then there's another one from Commissioner Corey. So I'll just run through them now if I could quickly. We have a communication dated today from Alderman Tedesco to the board. I'm writing to you today to issue my support for the East Dexter Avenue subdivision project. There were concerns relative to the waiver for the streetlights, as well as the waiver to limit the grade. With the withdrawal of these waiver requests, I issue my support for the project. With regards to the remaining waiver requests, I'll defer to DPW Superintendent Jay Corey and City Engineer, DPW Superintendent Jay Duran and City Engineer Jay Corey, as well as your judgment. Thanks for your time and consideration that you've put into this project. The residents truly appreciate it. Another one from Alderman Bruin to the Planning Board. The Planning Board will be reviewing a request prepared by Allen Engineering for several waivers from the subdivision rules and regs with respect to the development of the roadway, which will be constructed in connection with a special permit issued by the City Council on December 24, 2015 to Seaver Properties LLC, known as the East Dexter Avenue Definitive Subdivision. A copy of the special permit decision and the request from Allen Engineering is attached for your reference. This letter is being directed to you to express my concern and opposition to the request for waivers. Further, I oppose any waiver which would change or alter in any way the special permit and the conditions of the special permit as approved by the City Council. The roadway was an integral part of the City Council decision to approve the special permit. It is important that the roadway comply with all requirements, including those set forth in the City of Woburn subdivision rules and regs. I request this letter be read into the record. Thank you for your consideration of the above. I had a letter from Mr. Jerry McManus at 6 East Dexter Avenue. I won't read it fully, but it is part of your packet, and it expresses concern. He wanted to make sure that the light pole was in fact installed. He wanted a continuous sidewalks. He actually would like them on both sides of the street. Would like 2 curb cuts at his property, and like the street to be installed to the proper grade. He was willing to allow the developer to have access to his property and has no issue with that within certain limitations. To your question a little earlier, I have 2 communications from Jay Duran and Jay Corey. Jay Duran says the following: Dear Tina, I've received hard copies of the plans and drainage calculations for the proposed project. It's dated today, by the way. I spent some time with a design engineer. However, I still need time to thoroughly review the plans and calculations both in the office and then in the field. Some of the information shown does not appear correct and will need field verification. These impacts could be major. I do not believe that allowing a 24-foot pavement width should be allowed for public safety reasons. In addition, I do not allow my own highway department to use plastic chambers in a city right-of-way. They have certain advantages on private properties, but have no place, based upon their track record, in public roadways. This could be a major expense in the future for the DPW to dig up, replace, and restore the roadway. This is simply a waste of the taxpayers' money. Lastly, I did not realize that the waiver request for a sidewalk on one side only had an intermediate crosswalk. This appears to create another major public safety concern. This needs careful review and reconsideration. Based upon all the foregoing, I strongly recommend that the Planning Board hold off any vote on the project tonight until I can review this at the proper level that it deserves. I firmly believe that the Planning Board should allow a minimum of 1 to 2 weeks for plans to be submitted and allow for proper review and preparation of a memo that I/we can get out to the Planning Board members so we are maximizing our production both prior to and at public hearings. Please feel free to contact me with any questions or concerns. I will gladly attend a Planning Board hearing to discuss the matter further. However, it is an unfair request to do so tonight when the plans were just delivered. So in summary, he's happy to come, but tonight would not have been the night when he was most prepared. And then the brief memo from Jay Corey, dated today, this afternoon, was letting me and Mr. Duran know that he would not have an ability to complete his review by the meeting either. You see that he's here tonight to help to the extent that he can, but he hasn't been able to complete his review yet either, apparently.
Thank you.
Yeah, what's, and I know with that's full, what's that timeframe on this?
June 1st.
June 1st, okay.
Yes.
Because I peeked and looked at your recommendations, and And I do agree with, right at the moment, when we first started this, Mike mentioned the word compromise. And I'm looking at this, and would I like to get some of the other stuff? Yes, but I think in my mind, there is compromise here. And they've come with a couple of really, they've changed on a couple of big things. I think the grading was one of the biggest problems we had, and that was throughout the whole city, even with the DPW, and that has changed dramatically to get down to what the city requires. So I, myself, am okay with the way it is now with the waivers. I do have a little concern about the stormwater chambers, just because Mr. Duran is so adamant against it, and I would like him to get a better chance to take a look at it. So that's my 2 cents at the moment, but I appreciate what you guys have done since the beginning of this whole process. It has been compromised.
Thank you. Any further thoughts?
I echo Bob's judgment. I did mention, a compromise needed to be made. I do feel that they've gotten there. Again, these storm chambers, I'm not an expert on them. I know HDPE plastic can be kind of, resilient to corrosiveness as far as salts. But if it's never been used in this situation, I'm kind of leery about it. I know these guys are really anxious to get this going. I wish we could put a vote tonight, but I don't think that's gonna happen.
Mr. Tarby?
Yeah, if I could just make a couple of comments. I don't think the positions of both Jay Duran and Jay Corey have changed since day one. So I really don't see the need in pushing this off to another date. I think, we can simplify these issues. I think we're down to the plastic chambers versus the concrete chambers. We're down to the roadway width. 26 feet has been recommended by DPW. There was a comment in the original report, the sidewalk, if allowed for one side only, should be constructed with concrete per DPW specs. I think we've agreed to that. Doesn't recommend the elimination of shade trees. We had good reason to support that waiver. I think that's it, correct?
Yep.
No differences. So, I just spoke with Mr. Seaver, in the spirit of further compromise. He would agree to the concrete chambers if we can move this, this evening.
Does his agreement go away if they continue it?
I'm sorry?
It sounded like it was a time offer. It was good for a moment, though.
Yes, that's good, because that was one of the things that Mr. Duran was really adamant about. What I would like to do is, if we can, if we could hear from Mr. Corey, who says he hasn't had a really long time to take a look at it, but I may want to hear if he has anything to say at all, what concerns he might have, even though he hasn't had a lot of notice on it.
Excuse me. Thank you. Yeah, we've looked at it, we've spoken with Jay Duran, the DPW. Just to give you a little overview here, you have three things working together. You have the width of the pavement, from 26-24. What they're trying to do is reduce the peak runoff. You have the sidewalk on 2 sides versus 1 to reduce the peak runoff. You have an infiltration system which they're proposing, which does 2 things. It reduces the peak rate of flow, and it provides the TSS removals down to 80% for water quality, which you need for stormwater management policy, and what you need for Chapter 131, which is a separate element that they have to deal with. So I see where they're coming with it. However, in all fairness, the DPW has to maintain these items. If you look at that versus a standard infiltration system out of precast, they're 2 dissimilar animals. That's a lot more difficult to maintain with a Vector than a precast unit. Albeit they will have to do something to meet the TSS, so I understand what Mark's talking about. Beyond that, the roadway grades, they've met. Again, if they have the appropriate site distance, 500 feet, and a speed limit of 30 miles an hour and 8% grade is a condition that makes the crosswalk, mid-block okay, provided it has the uniform traffic control signage. The curbing, the more durable. Again, as far as I'm concerned, there will be little design details that we have to finish our review on, such as the actual drainage computations. The light was a safety issue, they put that back in. So in terms of the waivers, I'm satisfied. If you have specifics, I could deal with it.
Good.
Paul?
I had one question, and it was something that Mr. Duran mentioned, and I wondered if it would be something that you would also be reviewing. One of the things he asked me about, or said that he needed to look at, was the details of the McManus property, of exactly what you were planning to do, knowing that you need to grade onto his property. But that was one of the things that Mr. Duran mentioned, that he wanted to make sure was under review and reviewed well before endorsement, and I don't know, is that the kind of
Well, you have to
thing
make
you-
sure that
yeah.
the water is going to run in the gutter and not spill over his driveway apron into Mr. McManus's property.
Right.
Yes.
So that's the kind of thing.
Mike?
So Jay, I mean, for them to say they're gonna go with the receptors, the concrete receptors, it's kind of a big deal. You would like more time to review this, that's kind of, seems to be the bottom line.
Well, again, we received a mid-morning today.
Yeah,
And to be fair, it takes more than 6 hours to sit down and go through all the computations and the nitty-gritty. I think they've done a marvelous job. On the cursory review that we saw based on Mark's presentation, it appears as though they've met all the requirements, but we just have to check to be sure.
yeah, okay.
Oh, I'm all set. Thank you, Jim.
Very good.
Thank you. Yes, Jim?
Question for Mark, our engineer. The design of the chambers, the capacity, is based upon what criteria? Is the 24-foot wide roadway system and one sidewalk, half on one side and half on the other? Or what is the design criteria?
It's based on the impervious area that contributes to each catch basin. So it would be based on the 24 feet of pavement and the one sidewalk. And specifically the driveways, everything that contributes to that one catch basin.
So to take this a step further, because the words are out there for compromise, if this roadway system was put in by bylaws, it'd be 26 foot wide, and there'd be 2 5-foot sidewalks. And that impervious surface area should be considered in your design, correct?
It would be, yes,
Okay, but it is not currently.
correct.
So if this board does decide to compromise on that, in that direction, these chambers are undersized. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's all I have.
And
the question was asked, the
You
engineering
were-
department and DPW would probably respond, but if it was left, that we consider a waiver tonight, then they wouldn't entertain it. So it's, you gotta look at the whole picture when evaluating these things, because if we give them any waivers this evening, okay, that's what Mr. Duran and Mr. Corey have to consider in holding that.
There is a possibility, though, if future development is going to occur in that area that's going to necessitate widening the street or increasing the, adding a sidewalk, then there's also that much more land available to absorb the additional runoff as a result of that. So that's something to consider. We have designed it appropriate for the amount of impervious that we're doing, but in the future, just like anything, just like we had to do because the road was partially built with no drainage, we have to take on the burden of absorbing all of the increased impervious that we're doing. So any future development, I would feel that that developer would have to do the same.
Yeah, so as I said earlier, I'm good with this, with the concrete changes, it makes it even better. I'm not willing to throw this out for a vote tonight or anything, only because I have respect for Mr. Duran and Mr. Corey. I'd like to get their reports and have them take a look at it finalized, but, depending on how that comes back, I'm okay with this the way it is now. But, unless anybody else, I guess it's a public hearing, so we have to see if anybody in the public wants to speak first.
Is there anyone in the public that would like to come forward in the
Yes.
audience?
My name's Gerard McManus. I live in Dexter Ave. They're talking about me with it. I was concerned about the sidewalks on both sides. And now I'm concerned with the water issues too. And I was concerned with the grade because I thought the grade was really high. And I was afraid in the wintertime when these cars come down the hill, we have no idea where they're gonna end up. You know, I can picture it that you're lowering the grade a little bit, I still have some concerns. And I have concerns with the sidewalks on both sides, because if you look at it, if you put the sidewalk down on my street, it goes out to the end of the street too. So if you put it on the other side, it goes to the same place. So I don't know why there wouldn't be sidewalks on both sides. So, that's about it.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Do you have to sign it?
I guess
I'm
my
sorry,
cons-
would
oh.
you mind signing, there was a piece of paper sign-in sheet for your signature. We were just- we were last,
I guess my concern at this point, having been, it's outstanding, we have 2 evaluations and field inspections that need to be conducted, and to have something that's known to be incomplete, I guess I would personally be reluctant to go forward with a motion this evening to have any type of action on these waivers where it's been explicitly stated that further review is needed at this time.
Well, my motion was gonna be to continue it to the next meeting.
There's
I'll
nothing
second.
further, a motion by Bob to continue, second by Dave. All those in favor? 6-0 carries.
And may I just for clarification,
Yes.
that'll be continued to the board's April 12th, 2016 meeting. Good.
Public meeting staying open.
Public meeting will remain open, yes. Thank you. Next up is under subdivisions, East Dexter Avenue, Cedar Construction.
Same thing, this is the request for, this is the development on the parcel itself, at the corner of Baldwin, proposes 41 units in multiple buildings, I think a total of 9. And there have been some changes that have been made to this plan to address a couple of issues that came up on that.
Okay, as you know, where we left off at the last meeting, fire chief had some concerns about the turning radius in and out of the site, along with other comments. So I think to move things along, I'm going to have Mark go over the discussion with the fire chief and the revisions that have been made.
Okay, like Joe mentioned, we did meet with the fire chief and the fire prevention officer to specifically review the entrance configuration. I showed them the turning templates, and we did end up making some minor modifications to the curbing. There were some tighter radiuses, but actually now we're just gone with a straight angle out to open it up a little bit. And also, as I mentioned earlier, we're widening this section of roadway in front of the site to 24 feet. So this is going to give him the ability to come in with the engine here and go out this way, and he seems satisfied with that, along with the pavement width within the development, giving him plenty of access around the development. He did express concerns for on-street parking within the development, but we did assure him that there would be no parking allowed, and that certainly put that concern at ease. Some of the other revisions we made, we added fire hydrant here and another fire hydrant here, right here. Went through the specific locations with the fire chief, and he was satisfied with adding them in those 2 locations. So that gives us a total of 4 hydrants in the development. And lastly, we did some improvements to the site entrance. We've added a bike rack right near the mail pedestal, and we've continued the sidewalk out onto East Dexter Ave on both sides of the site too. So those were the revisions that were requested that we make.
Thank you. Any questions?
We're free to answer any questions.
Do we have a recommendation?
Yes, I apologize for being a little slow to drag it out. There is a recommendation from the planning director. My issue is, there are 2. One is that with respect to the parking on the street, the notion we had originally proposed, or I had suggested that there be signage for no parking. And the developer pointed out that he's trying to make a village-type atmosphere, and that in lieu of that, there could be language inserted in an HOA document that would indicate that there was no parking, and presumably some method of enforcement. But I haven't seen any such language, so I don't know. I've got something like on its way, maybe.
Very simple. It's just a regulation, regulations that are incorporated into the condo documents that say under rules and regulations, no parking shall be allowed on the interior driveway within the condominium. So I'd like to submit, and I've got 10 copies here, I'd like to submit for the record.
And what was the enforcement mechanism there? Because it can't be by Woburn Police.
Oh.
So what would it be?
Condominium, trustees, the other owners. Condominium documents haven't been fully drafted, but you could make a condition that a condominium document shall contain language
That's what I'm thinking.
consistent with that,
And that there be some method of enforcement. That was my concern, is that you have this, it's great to have it in the condo documents, but then there also needs to be obviously a way for them to manage it and use it, and call for enforcement, totally, if needed. The other issue, I apologize, I've lost my place now. lost that quickly. Can I steal this for a minute? Can I steal it for a moment? I apologize. The other issue that I had mentioned at the previous meeting was a concern about the adequacy of the lighting, the street lighting that's been proposed in the development. There are 8 proposed lights, I think, on the interior part of the circle. And there was some information provided in previous meetings about the dark sky standards, and that this fell within that or a little bit under what those stated suggested maximums could be. But I am concerned that there will not be enough illumination potentially from simply just 8 of these, given the number of lumens. They're not traditional streetlights. So my recommendation would be that if the board, or when the board considers perhaps approving this project, that one of the conditions it definitely should have would be that the developer be required to install the streetlights and have them operational before the first occupancy permit was issued. That he notify the planning staff as soon as the streetlights are installed and operational. And I would recommend that the board consider reserving for itself the right to evaluate that lighting once it's in. And if we find, or you find, that it isn't adequate, and that you would like to require some additional lighting, put a provision in your decision that allows you to revisit that issue and to require additional street lights, say, let's say an additional 10 maximum, if you find that the 8 that are installed according to the plan are not sufficient to illuminate the entire roadway.
Can I add something?
Yes.
The spacing of the streetlights within the development was based on a memo that was received during the city council process. And the recommendation from, I believe it was you, was that the lights be placed at every 100-foot intervals. So that's what we did. As far as the lumens go, I think we'll have our light guy take a look at that, but having to go back later on and adding streetlights, that may be a bit of a burden. Changing the wattage of the bulbs, that is certainly something that could be done, but
Well, if that were the case, I then think that we wouldn't be ready for a vote tonight. I wouldn't recommend that we leave that up to question. These are not lights that take electricity, they're solar, so I'm not sure how much difficulty it would be actually to add them to the site. But if there is a question and there needs to be a look to see if the lumens are sufficient, we've taken one look, but maybe we need to take another. I'd be reluctant to approve it without some out for this board to increase the lighting, and it may be more than just changing out bulbs and lumens. 8 street lights for that roadway is not a lot. It could work, but it might not. That's my worry. And maybe the answer isn't in a number of new lights. Maybe it's in changing the lumens, but I don't know that.
There were 2 conditions to the special permit, condition 12 and condition 13. Condition 12 reads, lighting fixtures shall be added at approximately 100-foot intervals along the interior site driveway to provide adequate light for safe pedestrian and vehicular travel. And 13, detailed lighting fixtures to be used on the site shall be incorporated into the detail sheet to show the method of directing glare downward onto the site and away from abutting property. So the condition does say, you must provide adequate light for safe pedestrian and vehicular travel.
But it also specifies one for every 100 feet on the interior circle. Doesn't contemplate any on the exterior or anything more close. Not that I would advocate anything closer than 100, but it's pretty specific. It says light shall be added every 100 feet at every 100-foot intervals on the interior circle. So I'm not sure that leaves you with flexibility to add more light.
Yes, Mike?
Kurt, can you change the, what do we call them, lumens?
Lumens, the amount of lumens, the amount of light that comes out of the fixture.
They call, okay, lumens.
Change the fixture.
Because it's from the sun, so it's lumens instead of just like watts or something.
Lumens is brightness.
Okay. This would be something that you could actually change the lumens, correct, if you had to?
as far as I know, I'm not a lighting expert, but I know there's different different wattages that you can get.
Because I could see where if,
What's that? Yeah.
because I think we, you know, if they put in the 8 and then we go and inspect it and say that it's not good enough, you need to put in 4 more, that to me would be kind of a hardship, because they probably have the 8 spaced out beautifully, and they're all in a row, whether they're 100 feet or not. But I could see having to change the light bulb and make it brighter or something. I don't have a real concern with that, only because I can't imagine that the developer would put in lighting that is too low, that everybody that buys the condo is gonna be complaining to him within the first week that we can't see anything.
He won't be there after the units are built.
Well.
I mean, after they're sold, I should say, I'm sorry.
Well, you know, maybe.
There- The fixtures are interchangeable too. It's more than just the bulbs. We could change the fixture on top if it wasn't, you
And
know,
I could
meeting
see
the
us
board's
putting something like
expectations.
that in there, that the fixtures maybe not necessarily requiring them to put in more of the total thing, but the fixtures and the lights themselves. I could see us doing that more so. Aesthetically wise, I think. I'm all about aesthetics.
Yes, Jim?
We put in some language that the applicant can meet the density requirements of lighting to satisfaction of the board. We can get some proposals out here and run them by us, give you some examples, get a lighting consultant on board or something, you have time on your hands for it. That'll get this off the block at least.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion that we approve the subdivision with the changes, not changes, but the applicant presents to the planning board at a later date before occupancy to meet the lighting concerns of the board currently for density and not a number of fixtures. So they'll make sure that it's safe walkways and roadway system.
May I ask two things of clarity before
Look,
this?
could I second it for discussion? Okay. Second for discussion. Please, Tina, are you satisfied or?
Well, the first issue was that I don't want you to say you're approving the subdivision. This application is for approval of more than one building on a lot for dwelling purposes. So that'll be the motion, or the gist of the motion. With respect to the condition, I just would ask you if you wouldn't mind repeating it so I can be sure that I'm clear on what you would have as the condition.
That the lighting density for the walkways and roadways is satisfactory to the planning board. And a further proposal from the applicant could be presented at a later date.
And just for clarification, question to the director, this would only be one aspect? I mean, there are several other issues that we addressed under this, this construction of more than one building on a lot for dwelling purposes. Are we,
Everything should be included in the motion. Now, with respect to the interior sidewalk and the addition of a bicycle rack, that has been done. So that when, when the plan, if the plan is approved by motion, that'll be incorporated, it's already been incorporated, so that will have been addressed. With respect to the issue of on-street parking, you have in front of you the proposed sentence that would be added to the rules and regs of the condominiums. We don't have any language right now that would enlighten us as to how enforcement would happen. And you wouldn't have that if you voted tonight. And I'm not sure how long it would take. These things are typically not developed early, but I don't know when the full condo documents could be available or an additional provision relative to the enforcement could be available for review, but that would be outstanding.
Well, first of all, condominium documents won't even be drafted until all the approvals are obtained, because it's, quite an effort. He's got to get an architect to show all the interiors of the buildings, there's got to be a further site plan, and then we have to prepare the condominium documents. But under condominium law, the condominium trustees and management of the condominium have the right to enforce the rules of the condominium.
The trustees have the right to enforce the rules of the condominium. How are we to ensure that the language we're proposing and the conditions that we need met are gonna be in those documents?
Maybe, you tie it into, what do you think, Scott, like a first occupancy permit? You'll definitely have them done by then.
Yeah, most condominium associations, when they set up their rules, they set up typically a ticketing of cars if necessary, or towing. They set up rules basically to enforce the things they want, and it's fairly common, frankly, that they would set up a ticketing system or a towing system in the individual condominium areas to deal with these things. It's common.
Yeah, so I would suggest before the issuance of the first occupancy permit, that the, planning director be provided with the language. If not before, that would certainly be at the latest.
And that would provide us with the language, but it wouldn't necessarily allow you any control and ability to change it, but it would show you whatever enforcement language they came up with.
That's fine with me.
With respect to the fire department's comments, I believe truly that they have been addressed by a combination of changes to this plan and some of the improvements you saw at Baldwin Avenue on the definitive. So the issues would then be, and the last one was that I'd mentioned the concentration of guest parking. It's all in one location, there's none of it scattered. We've talked about that at previous meetings. The thought was from the developer, he'd prefer to leave open space and green space as opposed to making it parking, in pockets around the development, and that may or may not have been more accessible to units. So it was an observation, it didn't go anywhere. I don't know that any of the board members objected at all to where the parking is being proposed, and I don't know of any problem per se with that. So I'll just, assuming that's not an issue, then you'd only be dealing with a potential condition on the lighting.
Yes, Bob?
May I say that what Tino wrote might be pretty adequate as to what we need? In your recommendation, you basically have three. The first one was require all streetlights to be operational prior to the issuance of the first occupancy permit. Number two, require the developer to notify planning staff as soon as the streetlights become operational. Three, which I just changed the wording on this a little bit, reserve for itself the right to evaluate the adequacy of street lighting in the development once it is operational, and should conditions warrant the right to require an upgrade in the street lighting, which, because you had installation of additional street lights, but I'm just saying upgrade the street lights. And number four could be, board is informed and approves the language of the no parking enforcement, no on-street parking enforcement.
And I guess I would add to that, approve the language prior to the issuance of the first occupancy permit?
Yes, that would
Yes.
be, that would be at the latest. I just had one final comment too. Just to avoid issues down the road, since the site plan has been modified with a couple of these minor modifications, I think your approval should tie in the site plan reference that we have in the special permit, which had it last dated December 1, 2015, as further revised by plans dated March 21, 2016, and that the board finds the plans to be in substantial conformance with the original site plan.
What's that last part?
The board finds these plans to be in substantial conformance with the original approved site plan. What we're trying to avoid is having to go back through the city council process on a public hearing if there was a determination made, say, by the building commissioner that, you know, I think these changes are major, then we'd have to go through the whole public hearing process. I'm just trying to avoid that.
I'm just wondering,
Maybe you send a communication to them or something.
that's what I'm wondering, it might be very difficult for this board to be able to certify right now that this is in substantial conformance. I believe it is,
Yeah.
but you haven't reviewed that plan independently to be able to make that
Right.
statement likely as a board.
Maybe communication from planner would be helpful.
I wouldn't mind that. I wouldn't mind being responsible for that.
So there were 6 conditions?
No, I believe we have 4. You see in my staff report, item 1 and 2. Those would carry forward as written. Number 3 would be revised to say, reserve for itself, meaning the board, the right to evaluate the adequacy of street lighting in the development once it is operational, and should conditions warrant, the right to require an upgrade in street lighting. And then we would add number 4, a condition that the board be informed of and approve the language, proposed language for enforcement of the no on-street parking requirement to be submitted and approved prior to the first occupancy permit being issued. And I believe that what Mr. Tarby was saying was that when making that motion, the board might reference the city council's, or might reference the initial plan of December 15, 2015.
Yeah, the plan references in the special permit, if you want me to read it, but it is in the special permit decision.
And you're suggesting that the planning board's motion should perhaps reference that plan?
Well,
Or
I
was
think
that
you-
part of
I think
your,
you have to reference the plan
In the,
that's been before you,
correct?
but it is this plan as further revised on March 21, 2016.
So the last, or the last thing would be to reference, and we'll find that date in the decision. Was it the 15th? December 15th, was that the date of the plan referenced in the plan of record?
Yeah, the
Okay.
plan of record was initially dated October 9, 2015, revised November 9, 2015, revised November 18, 2015, revised December 1, 2015, and then further revised by this plan dated March 21, 2016.
So, I'm sorry, which one did you want to reference? The
No,
original?
it would be,
All of
the
it.
entire
Right.
plan. Yeah, if you look,
And the first one was,
actually,
March?
the easiest way, if you look at,
October 9, 2015,
okay,
and then revised again November 9,
okay, yep,
and the
and
rest.
further revisions, yep.
did you want to go through the whole revision history, or just, because there's the December 1st rev? I mean, do we need to document all that, or?
I was going to have all of the dates,
Just,
October
yeah,
9,
All the dates should be included, right?
yes,
Which,
November 9, November 18, December 1st, and then further revised on March 22nd, 2016.
March 22nd or 21st?
I'm sorry, March 21st,
yeah,
2016.
if you look at page 2 of the plans that we submitted, at the bottom, the date is October, the original date of the plan was October 9, 2015. Right on the bottom right-hand corner.
Mhm.
And the revision dates are right above where it says existing conditions plan. So you have November 19, November 9th, November 18th, December 1st, March 21st.
Thank you.
Further recommendation or motion?
That was a motion, it's already been seconded.
Right.
Yeah,
So
was
all this
seconded?
is the motion.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed the
Remember, I seconded
second.
it for discussion.
Sorry, yes, you started the motion.
Lost my place.
His motion,
I
only
believe you
had-
did. Motion by Jim, second by David, subject to the conditions stated by the director.
Correct.
All those in favor? 6-0 carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
It's the most work we've had in a long time.
Next up, under preliminary subdivisions, Shannon Farm preliminary subdivision, Robert W. Murray, 286 Lexington Street. And at this point, regarding this matter, I do need to recuse myself, and I would ask the co-chair, Michael Van Treska, to step forward, preside over the meeting.
You're up to it.
You're welcome. Take your jackets. Joe, you want to wait for Tina to come back?
I'm sorry?
Do you want to wait for Tina to come back? Or do you want to get going?
Would you like me to proceed, or do you want me to wait?
Ah, you can start, why not?
Yeah, the applicants filed with the board an application seeking approval of a preliminary subdivision plan entitled Preliminary Subdivision Plan Shannon Farm, 286 Lexington Street in Woburn. The proposed plan shows 34 lots, all having the required frontage, and lot sizes ranging from 12,136.9 square feet to 2.2 acres. There were two waivers that have been requested. One, to increase the width of the sidewalk from 4 feet to 5 feet, and the other waiver is to allow for a 50-foot scale as opposed to a 40-foot scale when we submit the definitive plan. The 50-foot scale makes it a lot easier to read the plan. On March 15th, we had a meeting. Mr. Murray, his engineer, his staff, myself, we met with all the city Woburn department heads, planning director, planning staff, building commissioner, city engineer, DPW, director of Board of Health, Tony Blazkowski of the Water Department, fire chief, police chief, and Chris Doherty also from DPW. The input we received at that meeting will be very helpful when we proceed forward with the definitive plan. The plan itself, I'm just gonna go over the characteristics of the plan. The roadway layout will be at 50 feet. The width of the pavement will be 26 feet with vertical granite curbing. The roadway profile, maximum grade will be 6.75%, approximately 1,800 feet long. 5-foot sidewalk on both sides of the road. The sewer will be gravity with 8-inch PVC, connection to 16 AC and Lexington Street. Water will be an 8-inch cement line, ductile iron, connecting to a 10-inch main in Lexington Street. There'll be 5 fire hydrants, approximately every 350 feet. In terms of stormwater, there'll be 8 catch basins. Catch basins at low points every 300 feet. Proposed detention, infiltration for handling of runoff. In terms of conservation of wetlands impact, proposed activity more than 150 feet from the wetland. Outside of the riverfront, there's no firing necessary. Some of the individual lots may have their own firings. The storage estimate is 14,960 gallons per day. In terms of soils, Mr. Murray's engineer conducted 22 test pits throughout the site. There's good sandy soils, there's some ledge in the upper region and some groundwater in the lower region. That is the design summary for the subdivision, which, as I said, will only be looking for 2 waivers, that on the scale of the plan and on the sidewalk width. But before you was a preliminary plan, and our intention would be to follow this with a definitive plan.
Just out of curiosity, you moving the sidewalks from 4 to 5? 4
Yeah.
feet to 5 feet?
Yes, your specifications call for 4 right now,
Right.
but it's been so old, and Jay Duran is one, and he wants a 5-foot sidewalk. Well, it should be, but that's, we have to ask for a waiver to go to 5 feet.
Okay.
Your design, the city design is a 4-foot design in your specification.
Right, it's an unusual request to go bigger.
Jim?
Any preliminary layout for the drainage on site for each one of these lots? We're proposing to do a lot of these subdivisions, you have them in the backyard, back to back, is that what you're conceiving right now? I know it's premature, but,
They are working, the engineers are working on the designs right now, but the plan shows there's some, most of the, this is Lexington Street. There's some retention in here, there'll be underground that's in here, and then most of it will be in this area, which is in the, there's a brook here and everything flows that way, so
I gotta hit
it'll be in the backyard.
I would imagine that the homeowner association would be maintaining. All right.
Any further questions for the applicant?
Could I ask?
Sure, Kate.
I wanted just to make sure I was clear. Is this roadway intended eventually to become a public street, or are you expecting that it will remain in private ownership to be maintained by a HOA?
It would be, I would say it'd be accepted by the city.
That's what I
somehow.
assumed.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
because it's designed to your specifications, so it is.
May I ask one more?
Sure.
Did you talk yet about the fact that there are some waivers being requested that are not necessarily reflected on this plan?
Yes, we did. The 2 waivers were sidewalk from 4 feet to 5 feet, and the second waiver was to allow for a 50-foot scale versus a 40-foot scale.
So no request for a waiver of the planting strip from 3 feet down to 2.5, and no request for a reduction in pavement width?
No.
Beautiful.
Regarding that planting strip, I would like to, I think it's a board, there's been some talk back and forth in various subdivisions, whether we have the grass strip between the sidewalk and the curbing. I like it that way, but previously, I think some of the department heads would rather have it on the sidewalk on the curbing. And that's, I think, is up to you, the board. I would prefer to have the grass strip between the curbing and the sidewalk.
As it's currently written in the rules and regulations? I believe it's currently
I
written like
believe it is,
that.
I believe that's the way it is in the regulations.
Yeah.
It's often waived and moved to the back of the sidewalk. But I think you're right, more traditionally, you see the grass strip between the curb and the sidewalk with the trees in it. And that provides.
One of the things about it also is when you put mailboxes up,
Exactly.
Right.
you can put the mailbox in the grass strip and it's not blocking the sidewalk, and the mailman can get at it. If you don't have that, makes it tough. And I think it looks much better with the grass strip between the curb and the sidewalk.
Duly noted. Bob, question? You good?
I don't have a question, should we do this two parts, grant the waivers first and then, okay. I'd like to make a motion to grant the two waivers that are being requested.
Second.
Motion made by Bob to accept the two waivers requested, seconded by Dave. All in favor? 6 in favor?
5.
5. Oh, 5 in favor. Oh, okay. So that motion carries to accept the waiver. Just to speak on the subdivision in general, I live up in that area. I was cringing when I heard that there was gonna be townhouses in there. When I saw this, I was almost jumping up and down. Good job. Almost jumping up and down.
Can you still jump up and down?
Any other motions?
Is there a suggestion?
Oh, are you looking for a recommendation?
Oh, I'm sorry, Tina. Yes,
Is that what I'm-
recommendation,
Yeah.
please.
Thank
Been
you.
out of step for a
We've
while.
all done this, we've all done this, so
Yes.
we can help.
I love it. Takes a village. I would recommend that the board consider granting approval of the preliminary subdivision as submitted with the waivers as mentioned earlier, and would just add to the motion that the developer take heed of the comment letter we received today from Jay Duran on the preliminary plan, pointing out some issues and thoughts for development of the definitive. So I'd like to call that particular letter out, not as necessarily a condition of approval of preliminary, but a caution to the developer to take a look.
So moved. Second.
Motion made by Dave to accept the preliminary subdivision as presented with, to note the comments by the city DPW superintendent. Motion made by Dave, seconded by Bob. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Good luck.
And lastly, for this evening, we have minutes from March. Twenty-third?
8,
March 8th? Oh, today's the 23rd.
today's the 22nd. Be pretty hard to get you.
Yeah. Here we go.
Been a long day, Mike. So if Bob and I abstain, did 3 people vote?
Wow, you and your
Oh,
brain.
she can stand, yeah.
She's not coming back. She's left.
It just has to be a majority,
That's
right?
right, majority of those present voted. 3 to 2 would work, or 3 to 0 to 2. In this kind of a matter, 3 is enough.
So many boards, so many different sets of rules.
Motion to accept the minutes by Kevin,
Second.
second by Jim. All those in favor?
Abstain.
3 in favor, 2 abstaining.
Thank you.
Any further business?
There is not, sir.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
I would second that motion.
Motion to adjourn at
8:55.
8:55 PM.
See, you take over, look how long the meeting is, you took over.
That's what happens. Seconded by Bob, all in favor? 5-0.